everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. My name is Fazz.
And my name is Rich.
And we are recording on a Tuesday, which is weird. It's almost the weekend, effectively.
Is it?
More so than Monday.
Is it?
I've got beers. So,
Okay.
Therefore, that feels like the weekend. Do you know, I think most people feel this way. Like, I definitely see my week as like a downhill Indiana Jones we were just discussing a second ago, sort of, with the boulder sort of situation. And Monday feels like the most gravitational potential energy of a shit show to happen. And then by the time you get to Tuesday, I feel like everything's okay. I've probably got past those first arrows and stuff, and There's not as many dead bodies and shadows and things.
I fucking hate Tuesday.
Do you?
Yeah, it's such a non-day.
I'm not saying I love Tuesdays. I just
Why
feel
do
like
they exist?
I just feel like I've got over the hump of Monday, so therefore everything's fine now.
Nah. Mondays are all right. Wednesdays, okay, sure, hump day, fine. But it feels like that's only the case because Tuesday exists.
Fair enough.
Tuesday is like an appendix of a day, just
and
flapping around.
You could just remove it at any point. Really,
Yeah,
pretty
nobody
much,
would notice.
Yeah.
Where's my 4-day week? Bring it on.
Yeah, but then if you took Tuesday out, then something would become the new Tuesday.
Yeah, and then I'll remove that too. Mercilessly, until time itself ceased to be.
So, but I did have an event just literally on the way over, and I saved it for the podcast. I saw a shooting star.
Oh, well done.
I know, how cool is that?
That's nice.
Yeah, see? Yeah. Well done, Tuesday.
Yeah.
Probably
it's not really going to sway me, if I'm being honest, but, that's cool. Good for you.
If you just seen the shooting star, would that have swayed you?
No.
Okay.
No. Well, because it's still Tuesday.
Yeah. But it is Freeplay Fortnightly on our podcast also.
Is that what we're doing today?
It is indeed. I love that the prep is
I'm so unprepared.
The prep is about 3 minutes of
you have no idea.
your life. I'm going to be honest, this is definitely one of those things where I don't prep, but I'm sort of thinking about what's about to happen, almost like a professional sportsman, right, okay, this is what I need to sort of hit tonight, and I'm not saying necessarily nail it. I don't do that at all, but I'm thinking about it quite a lot, and I think you're a bit nonchalant, Rich, with your.
I just turn up.
But it's always such good analysis, though. It feels like
it's not bad for pulling it on my arse.
It's great. It's really good for pulling it on your arse, and it just tells me about the kind of people that we are. That I'm always I need to be kind of a bit focused, a bit pumped up. I need to have thought about my notes and stuff a little bit, probably a few days in advance. And you're just
wing it.
It's Tuesday.
Fucking Tuesdays. Ugh.
So we played a game this week each, and we will both review said game, and then from that point, our partner in crime will review that game with a score. No, sorry, I said that wrong. We'll give a score for the review of the game.
Yep.
That'll do. That's about right. That's fine. That's okay. Yeah, we're good.
More or less right,
cool.
isn't it?
So I'll go first this week because I've noticed recently that I've been kind of ushering you to the front to kind of give myself that preparation time of,
I mean, I don't mind going first if you want, if it makes things easier for you.
No, it's okay. It's fine. It's good.
Sure?
It's okay. Yeah, I'm all right.
All right.
Yeah.
You got it? You need a little minute?
It's not stressing me out.
Am I making it worse? How about now?
Now, yes. So, yeah, I noticed that I'd kind of when I looked at the podcast running for the last 8 weeks, so I was I think I've been making Rich go first a lot.
Fine, I really don't care.
In you go. So, yeah, I'll go first this week.
Yeah.
I was a bit affronted to learn that the games that I was looking at this week, there was some sort of serendipity with I'd started playing this game and all of a sudden it became huge news. Huge sporting news that that I didn't even really and this is what I'm going to get to as well. Is it really sporting news? So I played. I had been playing for about a month. Punch Out,
all right,
and Super Punch Out. And then I realised about 3 weeks in, everyone's "Oh, Mike Tyson's fighting." Jake Paul?
Logan Paul.
One of the Pauls. Yeah. Right, okay, and everyone's going to be "Oh, you don't know who the Pauls are." I don't give a flying shit who they are. Yeah. That is in. But anyway, so, 100 million people watched it on Netflix, apparently.
Good for them.
And this is what I kind of wanted to ask you before we got into this, is almost that... so, I was thinking about this, and I was "Oh, don't give a fuck." And a lot of people are it's just a spectacle and it's a bit of a freak show almost in a way that I just kind of want to watch and pay for or whatever. And I'm like, well, that's fine. And then I was thinking, am I speaking out of two sides of my mouth? Because I quite like watching wrestling, which is kind of like fun and fabricated.
And where Logan Paul ended up.
Yeah, exactly. So how much different is it from Mike Tyson fighting Jake Paul in boxing and that being a bit of a kind of laugher? And what I would get your take on it, really, that, you know, do you think it's kind of one and the same? Or because, you know, you like wrestling. In fact, on Saturday, we're going to be playing a wrestling RPG at your house, which I'm very excited about. So what's your take on it? Because
boxing is a sport that is not predetermined. Wrestling is, therefore, having a laugh a minute hoot of an exhibition match between somebody who, you know, you read some of his comments to, I think it was like a 14-year-old YouTuber or something like that, where he's basically like, nothing matters, we all turn to dust. And all that, like, Mike Tyson is not a happy man right now, I think.
Yeah.
Now. I mean. Well, yeah, full stop. But like, the whole thing, from what little I saw of it, and I didn't watch the thing, but like, it just seems like a bit of a circus.
Yeah.
For the sake of circus's sake. In wrestling, you expect that.
That is the circus.
Boxing is an Olympic sport.
Yeah.
You know, like it's meant to be treated as such, I think. So I can see why somebody thought to try it. But, you know, it's not a predetermined thing. Or it shouldn't have been. Yeah. I don't know if it was on this occasion.
Well, that's the thing. You don't know.
Given the circumstances. But either way, I think it was a crap idea.
Yeah. I always just find that certainly the difference between wrestling and boxing for me feels like, and if it is meant to be true to its word and not be predetermined, the fact that a boxing match can last about 13 seconds if everything goes wrong or right for one person, and yet wrestling has to be, you know, basically strung out to be a storyline, to be an actual entertainment value. So I always feel like you don't get many wrestling matches where it's like, oh, it's over and done with, and you get a whole night of it. Whereas with boxing, I know you kind of get some pre-card stuff, but I remember when Ricky Hatton got taken out by Floyd Mayweather, and I think that fight was over very quick, and that was just one of the most built boxing matches ever. And it was done so quick, and I was like, and I watched it around, you know, and that was like when I was kind of dabbling a little bit with thinking, oh, am I into boxing? And that was made me realise I wasn't into boxing, because I was like, what? Why we all just paid £20 or whatever to watch that, and nothing happened?
And it was actual violence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was like a man got the shit beat out of him, and I was like, yay!
Yeah, and like, I mean, I think for me the difference is if you go watch like wrestling, say at the Olympics, like actual proper, this is a sport. Wrestling, it's very different to professional wrestling in the sense that we're talking about it. And I think that someone trying to introduce some of that, let's call it pageantry, to boxing. Boxing doesn't need it, you know, as we've established. And B, like it just feels like it's making a bit of a mockery of it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I feel like boxing would be a better sport if it didn't have all this kind of going on. And that is, I'm not the right person to have that discussion. And it's already in the big wide world at the moment. A lot of people, I guess even just click on any sort of sporting website, that conversation be going on. You know, is this the right thing to be doing? Because it's a bit silly. So we don't need to have that conversation here. But it is just like, I feel like it would just be so much better if this didn't happen. So, what about Mike Tyson's Punch-Out in 1987? I played the Punch-Out version on the Nintendo Switch on the NES. So that actually is just titled Punch-Out. And it was relicensed in 1990, I think it was. So it didn't have Mike Tyson's name on it, which is pretty lucky because they sort of repackaged it to sell it as just as Punch-Out 2 years before he became a convicted rapist. So, well done, game producers, developers. It's just like...
Starring Tyke Myson.
Yeah. It just feels like, it's so weird to have it so sullied, but also, you know, I'm glad almost that in a weird sort of roundabout way that the game kind of got out from underneath that before any of that happened. Because the game itself is an amazing entity on its own. So, have you played much Punch-Out? Or?
I haven't played much of it, but I have played it.
Okay. And that I really wanted to, so I'd only really dabbled in it like for minutes at a time. Sort of just the classic, I want to see what this classic game is about, this, you know, and sort of understand it, never having a NES or a SNES when I was younger. So at the time, probably like 2 years ago or something, I had a little go on the NES on the Switch, and I was like, okay, yeah, I can see it's a boxing game, and I was like, I can see why, you know, it looks great and looks really, really good for a game from, you know, nearly 40 years ago. You know, it's almost like, yeah, yep. So you kind of go, okay, fair enough. But then I thought, right, I'm going to come back to it and play it, you know, in earnest and really give it sort of some time of day to see why people would think it's such a classic. Because from playing for half an hour back in, you know, 2 years ago, I really didn't get that. And this time round, sort of, I spent about a week trying to really learn the mechanics of how to play Punch-Out. And so, like I said, I've played Super Punch-Out as well, and to a much lesser degree. I probably spent about 3 or 4 hours of Super Punch-Out just to get a comparison of what that looked like. What's really annoyed me probably is that after playing these, I've heard that obviously the Wii Punch-Out is extremely good. That is, in most people really, really, really enjoy that as well. And I've always thought, oh, I'd really like to play that, but you can't really get it anywhere, and it's like, you know, an actual physical copy costs quite a lot of money now. Uh-huh. And I think that's probably because it's quite sought after, because weirdly enough, it's one of those games that isn't just sought after because people want to own it. I think people actually want to keep it and use it, and because it's meant to be so good. So fair. It's interesting to hear. So yeah, you play as Little Mac, who's a 17-year-old and 107 pounds, wet through. Wow. And you're trying to help him become the champion through lots of different ranks. And this will be verbatim for people that have played this game over and over. For people that are, you know, that are a bit like me, who don't know all these kind of things, it doesn't really necessarily matter. I don't think that, like, your characterization of Little Mac, it's probably what you're facing that matters more. So in terms of what you can do with Little Mac then, so you can duck, you can dodge, you can throw punches from left, right, high and low. You can earn a super uppercut as well, so if you box well with counter punches. And then you've got a sort of like a heart counter as well, which decreases when you get hit or if you block a punch. It's kind of like more of a stamina bar, I would say, than it is actually sort of a health bar, really. You know, or if you get a block punched. Start that again. Yeah, I've been hit in the head. A punch blocked. Then basically that also drains your bar as well. So it's all about, you know, it's not just, oh, I've been knocked out. It is, if you're not fighting well, you start to lose these hearts as part of your bar, which is an interesting sort of way of making it work, because it isn't just about, you know, I'm just going to sit here and dodge all these punches. Like, I have to, you know, make sure I time mine back well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, you become, if you get those stamina bar down to 0, you become punch drunk and unable to attack, which, you know, we've all been punch drunk, right? Not just drunk. You know, I can't attack when I'm drunk either. You know, and it doesn't vary too much from boxing in terms of how you decide a fight, so you can get knockouts, technical knockouts, or by decision, which, if you gain enough points by fighting well, this is where it becomes an arcade video game. If you gain enough points from fighting well, you can win by decision, but you have to earn enough points by fighting well in the first place, which, right, you know, obviously like real life. So that's kind of where the simple stuff sort of finishes, I think, when Punch-Out, because I was thinking, you know, if you describe it like that on the podcast, it'll sound a bit boring and a bit rote, but what makes it such a good game is that whilst it is a simple enough rhythm game, the accuracy that you have to complete this game with, it's such a good arcade style game. And we talk about shmups all the time, and the repetitive nature of a shmup and getting better and learning is very much at the core of what makes Punch-Out really, really good. You know, I think that you really have to understand what the opponent's tell is. So that's the only way that you can kind of complete this game. I first went in just windmilling. I was like, oh, it's just a boxing game. You just have to outbox them. Do you know?
Just lamp him.
Yeah, exactly. Don't worry about it. You know, come on, Little Mac, £107. It's absolutely fine. But understanding after a little while that it wasn't about that. It was all about, right, when is my opponent telling me they're going to strike, and how they're going to strike, and how do I counteract that? You know, it's amazing that the level of difficulty that they put into this game by doing that, and just it's as accurate a rhythm game as I've ever played, really, and certainly one of the only ones that isn't. Whilst the music is in the background and the fight music is brilliant, like when you're actually in a fight, Pokemon fighting music owes so much to the Punch-Out fighting music. Go back and listen to them both together and you'll see it's literally pretty much like the exact same thing. And so whilst it's not a music rhythm game, you kind of get that feel of, right, okay, say with Parappa Rappa, for example, you get an idea of when you need to be pressing these buttons, as and when. Every single pixel matters and counts. Like you just have to be inch perfect for when you're being attacked or when it comes to your time to attack. And I knew from previous reading around retro games and things that this actually is notoriously a very difficult game, and I can see where it's one of those really, really hard games, but man, does it suck you in. You are such a glutton for punishment because you just know if you get it just right, there is a path. It's just the path is so tiny and over an edge of a cliff and you're punch drunk. Like it really is quite incredible how I would say it's a genuine classic for the reason that so many people are so enamored with it. And yet it's one of the hardest games I've ever played. It's just like, you just want it to be hard and you really, just want to keep on coming back and taking that punishment. And in a way that makes it a classic boxing game as well, because, I imagine, I've never been in the boxing ring or anything like that, but, and I certainly wouldn't be the fittest person to do it, but certainly from a mindset point of view, like, I've always been the kind of, get knocked down, try and get back up again. You're never going to keep me down. I was going to start singing. But,
I can tell.
Yeah. You get that. I get that feeling inside me, inside my stomach where I'm like, right, okay, that's what I want out of my teams that I support and, that I see in my sport. I love that underdog sort of feeling where it's like, just, take all the punishment and get back up and stand there. And you get that completely from this game. So it just got its hooks in me so well because I was like, oh, this is exactly like my real life, how I feel.
I'm the plucky underdog.
Yeah. I'm not 107 pounds.
Or 17.
Yeah. Also, yeah, I'm more than double 17. It's like, oh, good Lord. Which brings me kind of onto, really, I guess, my notes. So rather than saying much more about what the game gives, because you've either played this game or that would be enough for you to go away and play this game with, I've just got some notes, really, that kind of thoughts and feelings I had whilst playing the game that I'm just going to kind of read out. Genuine rivalry emotions. So I just couldn't wait to have a crack at some of the people. That is and this is where everybody kind of, it's famous for, I guess, the run of boxing opponents that you have, almost villains in some cases, that you kind of get. I just couldn't wait to get another crack at them. Just wait in the darkest to just destroy King Hippo, for example, who, in the end, you find out that actually once you know how to defeat King Hippo, that actually is quite an easy opponent to defeat. But until you know that, until you ring the Nintendo helpline or Google it, then you'll never know. But he was such a shithouse. But yeah, another note was, fuck you, Great Tiger, you fucking fuckety fuck. Like, nice. Which was nice. A genuine feeling. Like, I just... so the run of opponents, and I'll go through them just quite quickly. So Glass Joe, Von Kaiser, Don Flamingo, Bald Bull, and King Hippo. They are... It probably took me about half a week to beat them. And then I didn't realise how... I say this out loud. How easy it was to beat them. Like, comparative to later opponents. But once you get on top of those guys, you've got them, I think. You kind of understand how to do that. But certainly Bald Bull and King Hippo kind of have this, I guess, mechanism where if you strike them in the right area, then you can deal with them. Like, Bald Bull does a dash, for example, towards you, and you have to just, like, pixel by pixel, as soon as he goes to strike you, you've got to, wallop him in the stomach. And then if you do that 3 times, then that is, like, he's knocked out. That is the end of that fight. So it's great that you've kind of got that difference in fighting styles, and also that you have thrown in there a mechanism of you just don't have to defeat your opponent. Sometimes it's like, oh, you have to defeat them in this certain way, and you've got to do it 3 times. So yeah, they were manageable like after a while, and I played this on the NES on the Switch, so I'm not going to lie to people and be like, oh, like I've completed Punch-Out. I haven't completed Punch-Out, and I use save states, and I'm not even going to lie about, I used the rewind feature a couple of times because I wanted to be able to see as much of this game as possible to be able to come and do it for the podcast. Fair. So, it's 2024. I'm a grown man. I use the rewind feature to see more of the game. That is and it's still extremely difficult even to use that feature. And I limited myself to go, right, okay, I'm only going to do that, like, as in, if I feel like I'm really close to the end of a fight and I've kind of got it and I'm being true to myself almost, like in a rule sort of situation where I'm like, I know that I can beat him from the situation, and I'm just going to save myself time to do that.
Yeah, well, it's all part of learning.
I'm a terrible human. No. But when you get to the next sort of guys, Piston Honda, he was my most extreme rivalry. He isn't the most hardest out of the next people, but Piston Honda I spent the most time trying to beat. So amazingly frustrating. Like Great Tiger, I've already swore at him, and Soda Popinski. I just put so fucking hard. Soda Popinski, who, if you don't already know, and this is one of these Aragon kick the helmet situations, that is in. But if you didn't already know, he was initially sort of like a drunk Russian, and then who drank vodka, and they had to like sort of tone it down and make him still a drunk Russian but just drinking pop rather than calling him Soda Popinski. So which is cool. Like all of these people, they are all late 80s, if you will, and quite happy at the end of the Cold War to still take these stereotypes and go, right, okay, well, I've got, a fat guy, I've got a guy from India that's called Great Tiger who's got a turban on, and it is very, like, you look at it in 2024 and you go, right, okay, well, that wouldn't fly now. But actually, they kind of still popped it back out in the SNES version, and they did it in Wii Punch-Out, I believe, in certain variants as well, and that's like sort of 2009, I think, and I think that it just became this sort of part of the culture where it was like, is this quite respectful in the end? Like, isn't almost the people thinking that, like, if you like Punch-Out, that it's like, well, these are just the guys. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and you kind of go, I don't, would I like Punch-Out to come back? And I think that they probably would in 2024 go, we can't roll these characters out again in this iteration. And I think, therefore, that's probably why it won't come back. Would be because it's probably deemed not okay. Certainly in today's, today's culture, which it isn't really. But at the same time, I could see why the game carried them on for so many years, and had those, because it's got strong characterization.
Yeah,
so
you can see why they might bring it back with some tweaks.
Yes. So, and then I got to, and like I say, and being completely and brutally honest, with the aid of save states and using rewind a couple of times, to Mr. Sandman, and it was, I think, the third last fight maybe, and I could not beat him even with rewind. Now, I read up, and there is a, as there always is, there is a mechanism to beat this opponent. I kind of got to the point where I was like, I need to move on to the Super Punch-Out. I need to move on to other things. I was like, and I was also kind of done at that point. That is just sort of say that, like, there's only so many ways that you can kind of feel like, excited by the game. And that's the only kind of caveat I would have, is that once you played it so many times, I could see back in 1987 if it was your only game, or and you became an absolute master at it. But nowadays, when we've got so much on, and us personally, we're doing a podcast and things, which we love doing, I kind of go, right, I'm kind of done with that game. I've done 80% of it or whatever. I'm fine. I'll move on. So that was kind of the feel I kind of got for it. I was a bit like, I can step away from it, and I'm not super addicted to it like I have been with, say, something like at the top of the tree.
Got it.
And I sort of said the flinch was real. Like, the amount of times I physically flinched because I was like anticipating the next move from the opponent. Not like a fear, but almost like oh no, and I pressed the button too quick, and I would I'd thrown a punch or thrown a duck too quick, and therefore they've just got me after that. Like, and like, oh, like, isn't you just, you're building up this pyramid, and even with the aids that I used, you're getting to a point now where you're like, you think, I'm at the point of no return. Like, isn't if I don't win the championship fight, I then go back to the start, for example. And it's like, so that becomes a stress sort of situation where you're like, I'm going to end up back where I started if I don't, I'm going to have to put the code in at the start of the round again just to get back in. So yeah, that was quite fun that I was experiencing that sort of like the amount of times that I felt that exciting frustration of accidentally pressing the button just a little bit too early, like as in after you sort of timed it to the edge of the fight and you're like, I just have to hit them one more time, and then you flinch and you're fuck. It's just like,
it's like Dark Souls.
Yeah, probably, pretty much, yeah. So, and I want to say as well that the sprite work and how good it looked was pretty incredible, really. So just very quickly, because I know I've taken a lot of time, but with Super Punch Out as well. So I just want to talk about what the difference was sort of 7 years later on the SNES. You get a same core setup pretty much as Punch Out. You get boxing, it's over your shoulder view, you're working through championship circuits, you throw the same style punches, but this time it goes back to the original arcade version, which I've never played, but there's a power bar at the bottom, and it basically, you kind of, if you have an unanswered flurry of attacks, it builds your super power bar up, which then can be used to unleash heavier attacks on your opponent. If you get hit, that drains that meter. Mm-hmm. And this game is completely tied to that power bar, pretty much. And therefore, you have to make sure you unleash loads of attacks and don't get hit. Because then if you do, you can very easily and very quickly deal with your opponents. I wasn't doing that. I know that from YouTube, but that is it. But you can. But
it's a nice theory.
Yes, yeah, you can do that. And there is a time attack mode on this one as well, because they probably worked out that people were trying to speedrun it, and they have been. And there's some incredible speedruns on the internet. If you want to check out Punch Out speed and Super Punch Out speedruns, like some people just do some amazing things. And if you want to judge your life as being a speedrun Super Punch Out person as amazing, I do. So it just I felt like with this one, and like I said, this isn't a review of this game, it's just I wanted to do it for a comparison. It looks incredible. The colours just pop. Like, as in, for a game from 1994, it is beautiful. Like, as in, and you could spend a lot more time looking at the animations and drawings on this one, I think, than obviously the game from 1987 on the previous console. The thing about Super Punch Out, and we're not doing this for a review score or anything, just an idea that it felt a little bit less tight than the original Punch Out. So it was almost like there's still a huge difficulty curve there. It felt like there was less rhythm and predictability on this one. There still is, but I felt you could flail a little bit more and probably get away with a few more things, like almost like an actual boxer, almost like if you kind of backed into a corner, you could throw a few sort of punches and kind of get away with it. There's still that rhythm game there underneath, absolutely, but I probably skated by a little bit further in this just by kind of getting by, rather than Punch Out where it was like, you've just got to time it perfectly.
Reading your opponent and all that kind of
stuff. And then it felt in this one as well that if you just master that power bar at the bottom, then as soon as you get that heavy attack and you can keep it for 3 or 4 punches, you kind of probably mastered most of your opponents, really. So it felt like a bit more of a... It's definitely not a one-trick pony. It's still an amazing game. It just felt like a bit more like that way that you kind of were more power bar oriented. I'm going to chew your ear for another second, because Rich is so invested in this.
Oh, I'm looking at the what other games we've given what scores to.
Oh, right, okay, fair enough. You do that.
I'm plotting ahead to scoring it.
I'm going to tell you a game that, this isn't scoreable either, but a game that would get 0 out of 10. So, whilst I was on a boxing kick, I thought, I've not really got a modern boxing game. I'll try and see what's cheap on the Switch and see if there's anything kicking around. No, and also a bit of experiment to see, because I've mentioned before, I can't remember which game it was, but it was like you really loved it, and I was like, it sounds like a £5 game on a Switch. Anyway, so I bought a £2 game on the Switch called Rookie Boxing.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to try and save some people £2 here, but do check it out. So basically, this was a game that was more unplayable than Paratopic was for me. That is in. So this is this is now the worst game I've ever played in my entire life. So it was only released this year. In when was it released? In November, I think, maybe at the start of November. So my notes: no possible way to play the game. There's no menus. No punches actually land on the boxes. The boxes kind of pass through each other. There's loads of latency. The boxes randomly get knocked out. Like, as in, like, just like this dude, my box, the guy, I threw a punch, and about 3 minutes later, he just fucking killed over this opponent. Like, fine. You can't quit out of the game. You can't move your boxer. It's not like, is in. So all you can do is throw punches and move your camera. Like, your energy bar just is completely unexplained and doesn't function. Like, honestly, it is not fit to lick the boots of Paratopic or Carmageddon 64. Like, so. Just a word to the wise. Save yourself £2. Don't buy Rookie Boxing on the Switch. It is the worst game that has ever been made and that I've played.
I mean, I'm putting it on the spreadsheet.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Well, if you feel welcome to score Super Punch Out if you want to, but I mean, that was a very brief. But I would just stick to Punch Out and give that a 0. That Rookie Boxing
already have.
Yeah, cool. I mean, that means we now have to decide between Rookie Boxing, Carmageddon 64, and our retro ranked episode.
Well, to be honest with you, that's partly why I did it, because otherwise, Carmageddon 64 is the only thing down there. So there's no point having that chat.
You don't want it to waltz in.
It can't be totally uncontested.
Well, that game was, though. Like, you can't contest in that game. Honestly, I kind of feel like I want to. I think I've got a video on my phone actually after we finish the podcast. And I'll try and post it on socials of this game. It was insane. Like, I've never seen something so funny and the worst game ever. Like,
for me, the important thing is now when we're doing the kind of year in review, we will have an award for best 0 point game, which is the main reason I've done this.
If we fight it out, much like 2 boxes on that game, we'll just basically pass through each other, and then one of us will randomly get knocked out.
Fall over in about 20 minutes' time. That's fine. You can do that.
Punch Out. What do you think?
Out.
I talked for a long time there.
Yeah, you did. And I mean, I'm looking at what we've scored where and all that kind of stuff, and I mean, like, longevity wise, you kind of touched on it a little bit. Do you think that there is much, like, if you manage to invest the time, get good at it, do you see it as the sort of thing that, shy of speedrunning, for example, like, could you go in and play for score or anything like that? Like, is there much replay value there?
I think you can play the score, not necessarily that it's recorded. It's certainly on Super Punch Out you could.
Yeah.
I can't remember necessarily if there was like a scoring mechanism, like, apart from the score that you got. But yeah, the thing about the longevity is, and this is why I was kind of referring to the shmups halfway through, is almost that you can really feel that I can get better and learn this game and become better and better. To how competitive you want to be in the world or whatever, you want to give yourself a world ranking or something like that. I mean, there'll be competitions out there, and I think that because it's been around for nearly 40 years, I think that it's become this game that you should try and learn and play through once, I think, to see how good it is. But will I go back and play Punch Out again now just for fun? Like, as in, it's probably so hard that actually, I mean, I do genuinely, like, at night at the moment, sort of still see something that is in, not like out of fear, but out of, like, sort of think about kicking some of those opponents' fucking heads in. Like, as in, like,
what are you going to say about, like, reading your wife's movements around the kitchen, trying to anticipate and duck out the way or whatever?
I do catch myself thinking, I really want to beat Piston Honda, like, again. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, I could see myself going back to it, but
it's kind of got under your skin a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, but not like in a major way. Give it a month, and I'll probably calm down. I'll probably be fine.
I'm putting it in as an 8 out of 10. I was umming and ahhing between that and 7. I don't think it's kind of, like, I think the way it's grabbed you warrants the 8. I think is basically where I'm coming from. But that 8 out of 10 category is looking awful congested for us nowadays, isn't it?
Like, as in that podcast, when we come to do that podcast, like, as in, we will rinse through the first sort of 0 to 4.
Yeah, and
then it starts to get a bit
big chat's going to be in it.
I have been posting this on our socials, so if anybody does follow us on Instagram, we've stopped on Twitter because Twitter's for dicks. We just literally on Instagram post photos of, I think I'm up to bracket 6 now, so 6 out of 10s that I've been posting and trying to lead up to it. So 7 and 8 are probably might not fit on one page. Maybe that might be a couple of posts. They're pretty bad. I think 9's stacked too, so we'll definitely have. And I've been thinking about that as well, and we'll speak about this more in a couple of weeks. But certainly, I like the idea that I was like, oh, maybe we should make it a bit easier on ourselves, and maybe have, you know, like, oh, we have a couple or maybe 3 from the category,
one each.
Yeah, which I could probably bend to. I think 1 each, but then. I don't know if I want it to be 1 each either, because then it's like, oh, we can just get to pick whatever we want. I quite like the idea. It's more interesting
if it's not.
I like the idea of just one out of everything escaping, because it's just like, it's so ridiculous to make it such an arbitrary thing where it's like we've got like 30 games in the 8 out of 10 bracket and just letting one escape.
They're all okay.
I'll have to look at what last year's was again, because I can't remember off the top of my head what we decided in every single bracket. But we'll reveal them again in December, because everybody will be super interested, you know. Of
course,
the investments there,
both dozens of them.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I did want to say as well again, so thank you to everybody that's listening at the moment. You know, we've seen a real kind of, I'd say, a gradual uptick in the last sort of 3 months of listeners and people listening and to certain pods and things. And even the last couple of weeks, we've had a couple of people who've left really nice comments, who've started the pod from scratch, just found it randomly, and sort of, you know, and saying lovely things about it. So again, you know, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. We know there's loads of podcasts out there that are amazing, and loads of stuff you can watch on YouTube, etc. So if you do spend any time with us, we really super appreciate it. Cool. Go for it.
Oh, God. I have to follow that.
Well, that is the longest I've spoke for on the podcast, I think, probably.
Right. Okay. It's kind of convenient that you said about boxing and wrestling and combat sports and all that kind of stuff.
We got to wrestle?
I have been so close to reviewing WWF No Mercy for so long now.
Forever.
This is not that review. This is Beast Wrestler.
What now?
Beast Wrestler, Fazz.
Yeah. That sounds like a sandwich you get at Christmas.
Fazz added for emphasis. It does. Yeah, like you could get it from Burger King or something.
Yeah, Beast Wrestler.
The Beast Wrestler. Yeah. It's from 1991. I played it on the Evercade. Mm-hmm. It's on the renovation cartridge. Incidentally, that cartridge is awesome.
Okay.
Except for this game. So this, I think, was originally on the Mega Drive. And the stupid thing is, I did not go in to review this. I was going to review Dino Land, which is a pinball game. And I was kind of in the market for doing a pinball game to talk about.
Yeah.
And then while I was sort of going down the menu, I was like, oh yeah, Beast Wrestler, didn't I try that one time? Stuck my head in again and was like, you know what? I need to talk about this.
Okay.
This is...
I need to get this off my chest.
I need to get this off my chest. So, it's basically a wrestling game where you're playing as big, stompy monsters in the future. Mm-hmm. Kind of like King of the Monsters on the Neo Geo or whatever it was, but not as good.
Okay.
So it's this kind of isometric view, kind of like Fire Pro Wrestling or something like that. Go Google it, everyone. Highly recommended. But it's just not that good. So, problem... Well, let me get the positives out of the way, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'll go into the problems. It's got some nice monster designs. And by nice, I mean, like, they're kind of interesting. You know, some of the sprite work's interesting. That actually genuinely might be it. This was not a planned joke. But... No.
Brilliant.
No, that is literally
Love it.
So... Okay, so you're big stompy monsters, right?
Remember what I said at the start of the pod that you just didn't look that fussed.
Well, I played this for maybe about 20 minutes, all in.
Yeah.
Because life is too short, frankly.
You're right.
One of these days I will be in the cold ground, and I do not want to be there going,
Brilliant.
You know what? I wish I'd spent more time on Beast Wrestling.
Buried with your Evercade. And
It is a crock
I'm going to make
of
sure
shit,
you
really.
go with this cartridge.
I don't mind going with the cartridge, because there are some bangers on the cartridge. It's this game is bad. Is bad. So, you're giant monsters, right? And I had this exact same problem, weirdly enough, watching that Godzilla Kong, the New Empire movie. I watched it last night, and there's a good chunk of the film where you are just following Kong, right? Big monkey, in a big
notoriously.
in a big environment, surrounded by other big monkeys.
Got it.
Now, what happens then? Your sense of scale is totally fucked.
Yeah.
When he's stomping around a city with people, you get the sense he is a big fucking monkey.
Yes.
Not a big fucking monkey. That would be a different film. But the point is, if you haven't got a sense of scale, like being a big stompy monster is utterly pointless, right? So with this game, like you have a kind of crowd around this big ring that you're fighting in, but the people are basically dots, and you can barely make out that they are meant to be people. It took me quite a while to sort of peer at it and go, actually, no, I think that's meant to be a crowd, because that sense of scale is just non-existent. So you are two monsters in a wrestling ring. The sprite work is fine. The animations are not fine. So like you basically have like a kind of punch or a slam move. In theory, you can run. I was never able to activate it. You have like a kind of a tail whip or a punch. Kind of depends what creature you're playing as. The tail whip, at least for one of the creatures, the way it's animated, the tail just goes between its legs, and it looks like it should be censored, frankly. So there's all this sort of like just jank animation. Because it's isometric, it's very difficult to gauge where your opponent is and which bit of it you can hit. And so like the hitboxes and that are all out of whack. It's not great for it. You never had that problem with something like Fire Pro Wrestling, so it can be done. It's just that with this, it just never lines up properly. It's almost like they tried to take a load of the mechanics from a 2D fighter, put it into this like isometric viewpoint, and and just not balanced anything to account for it.
Okay.
So you'll be flailing away, trying to hit the other character and failing. They will repeatedly spam the same moves and all this kind of stuff. And it's just, the whole thing is just such a dull trudge of an experience. It really, really is. Like, I was just sitting there tapping the one button repeatedly to try and get them to do anything. You have like one player versus computer as a single match, or you can do a two-player mode. There is a tournament as well, and there's kind of like a story to go with it that does kind of ease you in a little bit. So if you did want to try and get in and learn some stuff, like I think, say the second creature you fight is quite low to the ground. Almost like a kind of cat type, panthery type, lizard type thing. And so I think that's there to...
That's just a thing.
Well, I think it's there to encourage you to use these low sweeps and learn to use them. The problem is that you can't hit it with anything else. So the first character you're up against, you like punch it a couple of times, build up your special, you hit it with the special, it goes down, you get a point, first to 3 falls wins kind of thing.
3 falls! Sorry.
This low slung thing, you're just jabbing it with your tail constantly, and it takes forever to do anything.
Nothing pleases me more than seeing you slowly jab with your tail. But with minimal effort.
And you've got like ponderous music with it as well. So you're just sitting there with this really ponderous music, nothing much happening on the screen, just waving your tail at another big stompy monster that doesn't seem that big anymore.
What kind of music is it? Because I'm a bit like... I'd expect all wrestling games to have some sort of like slapping, like, guitar, like not like.
Well,
not like
the
Poirot.
The Mega Drive has some awesome tunes on it, right?
Yeah.
Like, granted, the sounds that it would make could be a bit of an acquired taste, but when it decided to have like a hell of a soundtrack, it could do it. This is not it. It's just this kind of like, I don't think it's quite ambient, but it's. I am sitting here right now, and I'm genuinely struggling to remember any of it.
Yeah.
I don't remember it being particularly fast-paced or particularly, like... I think it kind of goes for that kind of Godzilla-ish, stomping, plodding kind of feel, but fails.
The fails, not the feels.
Yeah, it just... I've just got, in big letters here, arse. Like, it's got iffy collision. There's no defense, or at least I couldn't find any defensive options or like counter options or anything like that. So if you do start getting like caught in a corner and the other kaiju starts to like batter you with its tail or whatever, you're just kind of at its mercy.
Yeah.
Until the the frames give you enough wiggle room to literally wiggle you out of the corner. It's cumbersome movement. I mean, you're big stompy monsters, so that kind of tracks. But when you don't get that sense of being a big stompy monster, there's no fucking point. It's just slow. I've written here, is it as bad as Carmageddon 64?
Oh.
I think where I came down on it is it's not as buggy, but it feels like it could be as sort of mechanically busted. Yeah, like it's.
I mean, if notes are just arse, then which I love, by the way.
I got to the stage where I had that moment of like, it's not you, it's me. Like, was it somehow my fault that I was playing it wrong, or I'd missed something, or something? But I tried.
Yeah,
it did not go well, and would not recommend.
Okay,
at all.
Wow. I mean, I don't really have any follow-up questions for that. Like, that was.
There are better wrestling games. There are better kaiju games. There are better lots of things.
That was wonderful to hear. That had real remnants of sort of some of the lower scores that I enjoy when I hear the sheer anger in your voice of wasting 20 minutes of your time.
Oh, I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed.
Disappointment, then. Yeah, that also makes me happy too.
My disappointment comes across as rage. I'm having more Haribo.
Oh, that's what that is. Right, okay, yeah, got it. No, I'm glad. Yeah,
I have two settings, angry and angrier.
I'm really glad that I bring sugar just to kind of bring
Wind me
you
up.
down. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just kind of like, pump you full of it. Come on, let's go. More entertainment for the podcast. No, that seems like an easy. I'm going to say a 1 out of 10. I'm not dropping it as low as Carmageddon. I don't think. I just because it sounds playable, it just doesn't sound like it's any good at all.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Also, as an aside, sorry to completely interrupt.
No,
this does now also mean that Dead or Alive Paradise has some competition in the 1 out of 10 slot.
That wasn't intended. I mean,
happy accident.
That's one of those things, though. So that's probably a good comparison, because Dead or Alive is evidently playable. It's just
should you?
You should not play that game. So there we go. That's an interesting juxtaposition. Those two categories now, genuinely, I think, full of stuff.
I think you're onto something though, where objectively, you could look at it and go, well, yeah, that there is something there. It's just not much of it, and it just doesn't come together particularly well.
Yeah, I mean, I've already forgotten what it's called, so it must be that good. The Beast Wanker, something that I don't know. That is,
may as well be.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that isn't what I want my burger from Burger King to be called.
And on that,
but I could imagine an actual wrestler being called that.
Yep.
Which it would be terrifying. That isn't. So, who'd you rather fight, Soda Popinski or Beast Wanker? Either way, I don't want to get slapped around by either of them. So, and on that note, thanks very much for listening this week, guys, and we'll speak to you soon.
Cheers.